Hey everybody, it's Cyborg. Thanks everyone for tuning in. With Mortal Kombat 11 most likely looming, I'd like to discuss something many have pondered at one point or another, and that's whether we'll get gear in Mortal Kombat 11, and if we do get it, how can it be implemented better than it was in Injustice 2? And as always, if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe as we plan to heat things up for the eventual reveal of Mortal Kombat 11. So we'd love for you to join us for the ride. Now, for quite some time, it's been tradition in Mortal Kombat for characters to have an alternate attire. The nice thing about the attires is that they're all in one, and are designed to work as a whole. They go together. It's not a mixture of random pieces like you get with gear, but what they lack in personal customization, they make up for in establishing an overall theme and a cohesive attire from top to bottom. These attires can be based on story, they can be non-canon what-ifs, classic attires, or even be creative-themed attires such as Vampire Melina, Ronin Kenshi, or Day of the Dead Katana. These can vary in terms of quality and popularity, of course, the problem being if you don't like a part of them, you may not like the whole thing. Now, with Injustice 2, we were introduced to the gear system. This would not be the first game to introduce the ability to customize the way fighters look, as we've seen this with other juggernauts in the fighting game genre, such as Soul Calibur and Tekken. Personally, as much as I prefer the alternate attire approach, much like with Interactables being brought into Mortal Kombat X after they were introduced into Injustice, I think the gear system will receive the same treatment. However, I do hope to see some changes with the gear system in order for it to work better with Mortal Kombat 11 than it did in Injustice 2, so let's address those issues. The first issue is that the loot box system needs an overhaul, or needs to go entirely. If we remove it entirely, we could just see these items as purchasable using coins in the crypt. That would be the simplest of options. I would of course like some sort of way to determine what you're purchasing with said coins, as hundreds of items could take quite a long time to actually find what you're hoping to obtain, as we saw with MKX. But with guides online, even that should be relatively simple and quick compared to Injustice 2's random mother boxes with repeated items. Which brings me to my suggestion on how to revamp it if we're not going to completely drop the loot box approach altogether. If we continue with the loot box approach, which I strongly hope is not the case, I don't want to see duplicates of items. If we remove the possibility of duplicate items, that drastically cuts down on the time you need to invest on opening boxes and managing inventories, which already solves some major issues with the gear system. I'd also like to see less items overall. The differences between a lot of the items in Injustice 2 were so minute that you can tell there was a lot of padding going on to make the system and rarities work. We don't need 50 items that look incredibly similar. For example, it's far more beneficial to the art teams and the players' time and creativity to have 10 distinct leg pieces than it is to have 50 that look similar, and 5 that look unique. Now, I mentioned that word a couple times now, and that's the key here, time. Aesthetically, there were some awesome gear pieces in Injustice 2, however, time is the biggest factor. Having to spend 10 minutes to filter and clear inventories for each character, open a ton of boxes, tracking down and viewing and view... What I was gonna say is viewing the many items you just received from the tons and tons of boxes and their minute differences, it's all unnecessary time being consumed that could be better spent playing the actual game. I disagree that it should take as long as it did to obtain the items you actually wanted. However, at least let me spend the time playing the game to obtain them if that's the case. Managing inventories and the like gets me nowhere closer to those items. And honestly, all it's doing is showing me up front to my face how much time I'm spending on items that I end up deleting anyways just to hopefully make enough space for the items that I do want. That said, a reduction of the quantity of items and removal of the ability to get duplicates should lower that amount of time as well. Quality over quantity. And don't get it mistaken. Injustice 2 at the end of the day was a great game with many improvements over Injustice 1, but the gear system was what the game was marketed on from the get-go, and I'd just like to see it take a step back if brought into Mortal Kombat 11 and play a more supporting role. Make it special and cool rather than okay, I'm working on it, rather than an unnecessary hindrance. Beyond the time factor, I'd absolutely remove the stats, the rarities, and the abilities. The stats and the rarities because that just encourages the quantity over quality and the unneeded padding of numbers of items with minor differences factor. I'd remove the abilities because when you tie moves to something you have to unlock, allowing them to customize a player's moveset in addition to the variation system, which I think we'll see return in some form or fashion, it just opens up a balancing nightmare. I'm not saying that those moves shouldn't be in the game, I'm just saying those can already be baked into the variations themselves. The stats and the abilities both being tied together didn't help matters either, and essentially made the whole system obsolete for any player trying to have a competitive match. Now that I've addressed the main issues with the system in which the gear is handled, I'd like to talk about the gear itself. I mentioned having an overall fewer amount of pieces, but making them more distinct. Now, I feel like with Mortal Kombat, I'd like to see it dial back the scope of what gear is trying to offer each character. Don't get me wrong, I'm down for thematic and fun inclusions, as the themed attires in MKX, as mentioned earlier, were some of my favorites. However, beyond a couple of exceptions, I'd like them to be less random bits of armor, with a lot of lines and so forth, and instead be options best suited for each character to offer a more subtle customization experience. What I mean by that is, give us the option to put Raiden's hat on or off. Give us the different hats we've seen over the years for Raiden. Kitana with her mask on or off, for example. And whether she has an eye stripe on or what her hairstyle looks like. These are all potential options. Scorpion with a flaming skull, an MKX style hood, or an MK3 style hood, etc. That's the type of customization, that's the word. That's the one that I'd like to see. These changes in appearance can still be done in a gear-like system. Regardless, I think there's potential with the gear system if it were to be included in the next Mortal Kombat, but it needs these issues addressed first, and it needs to have a refined approach tailored for Mortal Kombat specifically. Let me know what you guys think. Would you prefer alternate attires or a refined gear system for Mortal Kombat 11? Comment below on your preference, and I'd love to know what gear options you guys would like to see if that's the direction they take. Shredder helmet for Sub-Zero, for example. We didn't get that in Injustice 2, maybe Mortal Kombat 11. Anyways, on that note, I am Cyborg. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, check out our other content. We've got character retrospectives with The Lost, and we've got gameplay on the Shrine. Go ahead, check them out. I'll see you guys later.